I am making baked brie with a cranberry chutney and toasted almonds.
Oh.
Ooh.
Okay, so we're gonna start with a little chutney. In here, I have a cup of dried cranberries. You could use other dried fruit, but I like cranberries or dried cherries the most. And I've just cooked down a cup of cherries with a cup of white wine. I'm talking whatever's left over from the night before, door of the fridge type of white wine.
Okay.
Cook it all the way down, and that plumps the dried fruit. You know, it hydrates them, right? They've had their margarita too. So to that, I've just peeled and diced one pear, and I'm gonna just add that in.
You've been talking about those pears. You're bringing them in. You love the pears.
You know, I'm not gonna make eye contact with an apple this season.
Wow.
Okay? I'm all about the pear
Bold.
love. Just cooking that pear a little bit to soften it. Now to that, I know you don't add butter to chutney, so I don't know why you would, but I'm gonna add a tablespoon of butter.
Cause thighs, that's why.
Because we need it. A little cayenne, just half a teaspoon, just a little touch. 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. You need a little bit of that. And you know me, a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. They don't make apple cider vinegar, do they?
We need the tang.
Pear cider vinegar would be
Wouldn't
awesome.
that be interesting?
Write it down, Sonny, for our next business venture.
So we're just cooking that down. You can kind of just let this hang out. I have a batch here that I cooked a little bit longer. You could kind of make it more raw and fresh or more cooked depending on what you want. Now, to that, I'm gonna add some fresh parsley and a tablespoon of diced pickles and a tablespoon of diced pickle juice. And that's because we're gonna put this on a giant wheel of brie. Okay,
That's
now.
a big wheel of brie.
I
It's our
swear,
queso and margarita, right?
that is the wheel that came off the bus earlier, is literally the brie.
This is a 1 kilo wheel of brie, and it's 8 inches in diameter. Do you know what I'm saying, people?
That's right. We mean business.
Yeah, we're not, this is a Friendsgiving. If you're really with your friends, right? Friends don't let friends eat tiny wheels
I
of
think that
cheese.
this format is that.
Oh, she cutting the rind off. Do it. Alex,
Exactly.
I was wondering.
I like the big format brie. I think it's better.
Do you guys always cut your rind off of the brie or no?
If I'm baking it, you gotta have that
gotta have
A little
point
bit
of
the
entry.
ooze. Sometimes I'll just do like a hash in the center and peel back when you're done. That's kind of sexy too. You know what I mean? Look at that.
Yeah, you want to open this up. So, I mean, I'm kind of thinking, you know, like a queso dip, you know, something really kind of big format.
I'm liking this idea right
Well,
away.
Jeff just made the
It's gonna be
point.
so good with these
We're-
margaritas.
Exactly. We're drinking margaritas. Might as well have cheese dip.
I like that we're shaking it up, don't you?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to put this in here,
the
tiniest
memo.
pinch of salt,
Oh.
and I'm going to just toast the almonds at the same time. Right? Why not get it all done at the same time? This is gonna go in the oven at 400 degrees. I like the idea of toasting the nuts and having a built-in timer. I have burned more trays of nuts, but this is just almonds with the skin on for a little bit of that taste. This is gonna go in the oven at 350 degrees, about 12 minutes. What are we looking for?
Wow.
A giant brie jacuzzi.
Okay.
Juggoos.
Okay. And that's
Alex,
a dry pan. No,
speak my
no fat
language.
or anything in it. I like that.
And then here we go. Of course, I just happen to have one casually bubbling away. And I mean, can we get a little aromatherapy going?
Oh, girl.
Bro.
Look
Yeah.
at
It's got
that.
bubbles in there.
Wow. You
I
just
am
stop
absolutely
right
for
there.
anything and
Take a
cast
little
iron
nose bath.
crusade like that stays warm for more than 5 minutes.
But
Yep.
look at the
Yeah.
top. I mean, it almost looks like a pizza.
I like the side.
Oh.
Put out some bread, put out some crackers. You could just put out crudité with this. Excuse me while I serve you all.
Oh, you are just so nice.
That is a Thanksgiving
I like how she
starter.
said she could
Wow.
just trust people. Okay. You're
Right?
gonna trust that I'm gonna take the proper amount.
Yeah, get a
Yeah,
shot
there
of
is
that.
no, you know.
There's
this
no
is-
proper amount, Sonny.
That's gorgeous, right?
There isn't, is there? Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
taking
you
a
can
photo?
go in.
You
I
got
like
it?
an action
Wait,
shot.
let me give you a slow-mo dig in.
Oh, hold on.
You know,
I'm gonna
we
get
make
the
it
video.
dramatic.
Here we go. 3, 2, go, and
This is
scene.
Friendsgiving, right?
Oh,
Everybody's taking a picture.
my
Cheese
dude.
pull.
That's what happens when you trust me, Alex, okay?
Sour mix.
I know. It's good. Oh, I
Get some
That
of
is,
this in
oh,
there.
look at that.
Wow.
Look at that. Look,
Oh, it's a little hot. Be
Wow.
careful.
Don't burn the top of your mouth, Sonny.
Come on, go
I know,
in
it's
there.
kind
Go
of
in
like a
there.
pizza. You're
Yeah.
supposed to, right?
Yeah,
Like,
And using a plate.
Oh my God, I love it.
Oh, the
yeah.
cheese.
Who needs turkey?
we already know about the brie. You know what I'm saying? Comes through, it's creamy. It's kind of like, you know, it'll accept any flavor on top of it, right? But What I love about this is I always have dried cranberries in my pantry, or cherries, which I think would be perfect here. You're
I think
right.
everybody
dried
does,
fruit
right?
would be great, right? But pears just don't get the love that
don't.
they should
don't.
around the holidays. They're so fall.
So sad about it.
They're so plentiful in the produce section. Delicious.
I'm just gonna rinse off the mussels to get any grit off the shells so that you make for really clean eating. Just make sure that all the mussels are really closed up. If you have a mussel that's slightly open, you wanna just give it a tap, right? To see if it closes back up. Because sometimes they're taking a nap. Otherwise, if they stay open, just discard them. First things first, I wanna get my grill pan screaming hot. Because the real fun in this is dropping those mussels in a single layer on the grill and just watching them start to pop open. It's incredible. Now, these mussels just need a little crunch, in my opinion. And I think nothing is better than a little toasted breadcrumbs. I like to start by heating about 1/2 cup of olive oil. I like to take just a few cloves of garlic, and I'm just gonna drop them and get them going. A little pinch of salt right on those garlic cloves and let them know who's boss. And with them, the breadcrumbs. And I like to use breadcrumbs that have already been toasted a little bit, so I already have that built-in flavor, and I'm just gonna enhance it. So then when I drop these little flavor missiles all over the mussels, it really brings them texturally and flavorfully to life. So now I wanna add a little element of freshness. And I think the obvious choice with mussels, for me, is parsley. It has a wonderful grassy, herby flavor that really counters the sweetness and the brininess of the mussels. So gather it up in a nice bundle. The fineness of your herbs should somewhat match the size of your breadcrumbs so that all these flavors really have a chance to get friendly with each other. I love parsley, but I always think that parsley could use that little extra something to make it extra special. And in this case, I'd say a tiny bit of mint, about 2 sprigs worth. Chop that up, and people will say, "What's in here?" And you'll say, "It's just chopped parsley." I don't know what you're talking about, right? And now it's time to combine the breadcrumbs with the fresh herbs. Now, just immediately transfer those breadcrumbs to a bowl and then add in those herbs. So I don't think this recipe would be even remotely the same if it weren't for that dry, intense heat of the grill. That's what's really gonna make the difference with this recipe. So, the moment of truth. Ready to cook our mussels. In order to get these grill ready, it is so easy, it's silly. I sort of feel silly telling you that it's as simple as mixing a little bit of oil, just tossing to coat the mussels in the oil. And now for that moment of truth, just toss them right on the grill. Now this is such a quick process that I literally stand over them and just pick them off the grill as they open up. And they're so dramatic. I love the way they kind of sizzle and then just give it up. I love that. You see they just kind of pop open right away. Right on the grill and then right off. I must say, before I even put the breadcrumbs on, I like to just sneak one. You know, no one's looking. Just taste that. You know, you get the taste of the grill on the shell. That's what makes it special for me. Now, to finish them off and really put them together, just pour them onto a platter. And now, sprinkle them with the breadcrumbs. Then I like to toss them a little bit. I don't like tossing a salad. Just gently. I get that immediate underhint of the mint and the parsley, which is just making the smell of the mussels all that richer. It's amazing what the grill taste, that little bit of mint does. It's these little touches, these little choices that we made, particularly using the grill, that make these mussels unique to me. So I'm getting together one of the simplest dishes, a little crispy squid. Now, I have to be honest, if you're gonna have an hors d'oeuvre party, you have got to have a dish that's deep fried. Now, to bread my squid, I simply break up 4 eggs, and this is for about a pound of squid. And then I'll just toss the squid in some breadcrumbs to get that wonderful, crispy texture. I've got here a pound of squid. You can buy squid cleaned and pre-cut. You can even buy it breaded and frozen. You have here the bodies and the tentacles. I just cut them into thin rounds. And the thinner you cut them, the better. If you cut them thinner and cook them really quickly, they actually come out much more tender and tasty. Okay, so I have my tentacles and I have my bodies cut up. I've got my breading station ready. So let's start breading. So easy. First, I just drop the squid into the eggs. Take the squid out. Just toss them in the breadcrumbs. And then lay them on a tray, preferably with a rack, to just shake off any excess breadcrumbs. And then for the second part, the bodies cut up into those little rings we love, coated in the egg, and then sprinkled over the breadcrumbs. And then same thing, spread them out over the tray in a nice single layer, and into the fridge we go. Let them form a crust a little bit. Once the squid are chilling down in the fridge, I want to make a little sauce, something to kind of drop on top of them to give them a little extra punch. Now, I love the crunch of celery. I'm gonna pick out 3 stalks from the inner part of the celery, where the more tender, smaller stalks are. This sauce is just a few simple elements mixed together, quickly sauteed, and drizzled over the crispy fried squid. So cut the celery fairly fine, the little half moons, as I call them. I like the leaves at the tops of the stalks. I add that in too. Once the celery is cut, I'm gonna use a little bit more of that homemade chili oil I made. Just drop a little bit, and a little goes a long way. So I'll just drop a couple spoonfuls and turn the heat on low for a couple of minutes. Get that celery a little translucent and tender. And a little bit of garlic. It's the rogue ingredient in this sauce, so I'm not gonna cook it very long. So I'll just microplane the 2 cloves, scrape that off, give it a little stir. I'm just gonna cook this for 1 more minute. Before I finish cooking it, I'm gonna add just some sliced lemon. Now I'll cut on either side of the lemon, creating 2 thinner halves. That avoids the center and all the pits, and I'll cut off the 2 sides too. Kind of like coring an apple. And I'll just use these pieces, pit-free, cut them into thin rounds. I'll just add that right in. Now, just because I avoided the pits by coring the lemon, I still want to squeeze it to extract any juice from the center. This has an amazing smell. The celery, the chili, the lemon. We're gonna drop this on top of the squid. It's gonna be a nice twist on that usual lemon wedge you get in a restaurant. Okay, so I'll just take this sauce off the heat, and I'll just leave that out to cool a little bit. Now, what about the squid? Let's start frying that. So I'll start by dropping in a few of the tentacles, and I'll give the tentacles a minute because they're bigger than the rings. So just give them a minute to cook on their own, and then add some of the smaller rings. That way I can fry the 2 kinds of squid together, but they'll come out of the oil at the same time, all crispy and golden brown. So the last of my squid is just coming out of the oil, and I'm gonna season that immediately with salt. Now, who can resist eating this piping hot? So I wanna get it right onto my platter, and then to top it off, that wonderful, simple mixture of the garlic, the celery, and that lemon. And then for that last little bit of freshness, just some basil leaves. And I'll just take a spatula and just give it that last toss. Look at that. It almost looks like a salad, but we know it's serious, naughty finger food. Wow. You not only get the taste of the lemon juice and the garlic, but also the lemon skin. And that adds that extra bit of complexity against the fresh basil leaf. Delicious. I am making a cozy little soup that will not cost a fortune, and there's no cheese in this soup.
I'm like Jeffrey's.
That's a bit passive-aggressive, but I'm okay with it.
No, I love you. I love you. Honestly, it's so delicious. I'm making my roasted sweet potato soup with a penny-pinching powerhouse ingredient, Ham Hocks.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
That's so you.
So I'm actually just gonna take 2 smaller Ham Hocks, and we're just gonna make a little Ham Hock stock while we're getting our soup ready.
Hock stock. Hock stock.
So a couple of cups of chicken broth and actually a little bit of water. Part of saving money is using less of things that cost money in the first place. So I mix half water with double the amount of chicken stock, and I just put 2 smaller Ham Hocks, and that equals about a pound. And I'm just gonna get that simmering on the stove. We wanna cook down that liquid until the meat falls apart and flakes off the bone. So you just get that simmering. Sonny, I know that you love Ham Hocks too. They're one of your favorite ingredients. What do you like to do with them?
I love a ham hock, okay? In a pot of greens, like collard greens, turnip greens, mustard greens, Hoppin' John, in a pot with just some cabbage and some stock. I love a ham hock. Plus, you can just like make stock from the ham hock and use that for other stuff like grits and soups and things of that nature. Yes, ham hock on 10.
Okay, so once the Ham Hocks, chicken stock and water are simmering on the stove, we wanna really just cook that down until you're left with only about a cup of liquid, and you just flake the meat from the hocks right off the bone. And then you have your little stock, but we're actually not gonna add that until the end. The actual soup is just baked sweet potatoes, right? So while you're making your ham hock stock, you can also just be roasting some sweet potatoes in the oven. Yeah, I know.
It's the best.
I know.
Also, like ham hocks you buy, they're pre-cooked.
Totally.
Throw them in the freezer.
Smoked.
They're so great. They add anything. You know, traditionally for pea soup, right? Ham hocks and pea soup.
That's actually what inspired me. I was thinking, I just love split pea, and ham and sweet potatoes, just a great combo. So just peel the sweet potatoes, right? I don't even need to break them up that much. I use about 2 pounds of sweet potatoes, 6 or 7 medium to large potatoes will get you there. And then coconut milk.
Oh, my favorite.
What?
1.5
In the
cups.
heavens is going on over there, Miss Alex Guarnaschelli?
And then more money-saving, my favorite ingredient, water.
Tap stock.
Absolutely. About the same amount of water. So half coconut milk, half water. And the coconut milk, it gives a lot of richness, but it also brings out, teases that natural sweetness and earthiness of the sweet potatoes. So we kind of have a 2-part soup here. Sweet potatoes, coconut milk, and water, and then our little ham hock stock that goes in at the last moment. It's kind of like a trio that comes together to make a beautiful song at the last minute. We have our little sweet potato coconut milk mix. We have our simmering little bits of ham hock flaked off the bone, and that makes this soup meaty. I mean, for me, that's what takes it over from a soup into a stew or a meal or that really satisfying taste. Of course, in honor of Jeffrey, I had to add a little bit of brown butter to this.
Of course.
I just felt it was critically important.
Wow.
So I made a little brown butter, just a few tablespoons, right? And to that, I'm gonna add just a tiny bit, half a teaspoon of cinnamon. We don't wanna overdo this with spices. It's really got a lot going on already. Touch of brown sugar, and then just some orange zest and juice. Just 1 orange, zested and juiced. And that kind of gives it that warm winter, fall kind of feeling.
Oh,
Stir that together. Okay, so we have our soup.
I can't wait to try this.
These are the sweet potatoes, right? And after the sweet potatoes and the coconut milk get nice and hot, you literally just puree them. I like to use a blender. You need that really smooth texture, really break up the sweet potatoes. If you use an immersion blender, I'll never know, and it'll be perfectly fine anyway.
There you go.
Yeah, they're okay.
Whisk the brown butter, get it almost liquidy with that orange juice, brown sugar, and just a hint of cinnamon. We don't wanna add a ton of spices here, right? We're not going in pumpkin spice latte territory. We're really trying to stay focused on the starch sweetness of the sweet potatoes, and then that ham. Just blows into town like a sheriff in a Western. So here we go, right in there. Ham hocks, that stock. It's also a last minute thing that thins your soup out. If your soup's a little bit thick, sweet potato soup can get away from you a little bit. It can be kind of clunky and starchy. Tiny pinch of salt and pepper if it needs it at the end. There are a lot of flavors here. You don't need to do a ton of seasoning to get to the end. So here we are.
Man.
And you're really on a treasure hunt for those bits of ham hock, right?
Yep.
Oh, I love sweet potato soup, and then everybody wants all that meaty ham hock in there.
Delicious on 10.
I like to crack pepper on top and not even mix it in entirely. So when you ladle the soup in, there's a little bit of pepper floating on top. I mean, we could add herbs, scallions, things like that, but I kind of like it straight up just like this. Okay, taste. The real sleeper here is that there's no cream, there's no milk, there's nothing to dilute the sweet potato. The coconut milk is just kind of sweet and rich. And then you get that smoky ham kind of meandering through. Feels like kind of like a classic vegetable soup. And then stuffed mushroom caps. So sometimes I like to use fresh herbs, but I want to flake these off their stems and just get the good stuff. So I'll just heat a little olive oil and fry those up. And already it feels kind of chefy and steakhousey in here. I'll take that out after just a minute or so. Season them with a touch of salt just to let them know that we love them and we're thinking about them. Now, I've also managed not only to fry my thyme so that it's gonna be nice and easy to flake off the stem, but I've flavored my oil with that thyme, which is kind of exciting. So I take my onion, about 1 good onion's worth, and drop that right in that wonderful thyme oil. So right away when I add something to my pan, I pay the salt tax by adding just a touch. That's gonna help draw out the water, and some freshly ground pepper. Now I wanna add the garlic. Now you can save yourself the tears and trouble of mincing by just grating the garlic. Okay, so just the foundation of that thyme oil and the onion, and we add that garlic right in there. Look at that, scrape that right off. Stir that in, and we're gonna cook the garlic for about 30 seconds. So to that, I'm just gonna add a tiny bit of personality. Half a teaspoon of cumin. Just add that right in, give it a nice stir. But what about the mushrooms? So I'm gonna take a little sour cream and Parmesan cheese and the mushrooms. Now, as a chef, I deal a lot of the time with very expensive, fancy mushrooms. But when I'm at home and I want real meaty, steaky flavor, I go for the white button. It's that secret supermarket weapon, and it's lonely and waiting for you to recognize its fabulousness. Take a nice dry pastry brush and just brush off any dirt from the exterior. You see that? So I'll set aside about 18 mushrooms, and those will be the ones we stuff. And then the rest, which is about 15, we're gonna put in our stuffing. And just slice these. Now these mushrooms are filled with water. So at this point, you really wanna turn the heat up kinda high, and don't be afraid, to draw out the liquid. Now, for my bottoms, I just wanna trim the stem off. Why not add those stems right in there? Why waste anything? Now, I'm a big fan of dry vermouth. It just adds this wonderful, almost tang. Just add in a 1/4 cup. Give that a stir. While that's bubbling away and getting fabulous, we're gonna cook our bottoms at the same time. We take about a 1/2 stick of butter. And then add those mushroom tops back in there. So, to bring this all together and give it that nice tang, I'm gonna add a cup of sour cream to that. Oh my God. And you see that these are no longer sliced mushrooms with garlic and onions, but they are a stuffing to end all stuffings that just belong with a steak. Now, let's not forget about our buddy thyme that we crisped up. Because it's been lightly fried in our oil, it just flakes right off. And I have to taste it. I don't really have to taste it, but how can I not? Now, the sour cream offers that tang, but it's that wonderful meatiness of the white mushroom that really comes through. How about a little Parmesan cheese? Just adds that natural saltiness to it. I've measured 1/3 cup, but let's face it, I like to call this an Italian 1/3 cup, which means it might get closer to a cup. Okay, so this is definitely more than 1/3 cup. But that's part of the fun of cooking at home. You can do what you want, no one's looking. There's no Parmesan police. Half of this I'm just gonna add straight into my stuffing. And that's gonna help thicken the stuffing and bring it together. And the other half of the Parmesan cheese, I'm gonna mix with 2 tablespoons of toasted breadcrumbs. So I've got a baking sheet, because we're gonna cook these stuffed mushroom caps in the oven. Pour them out. Look at how shiny and glazed and gorgeous they look. Take a nice bit of this stuffing, just pop that right on top. So I'm gonna stuff the rest of these, pop them in the oven at 350 degrees, and cook them just till they kind of go rrr. And they all become one. And then we're gonna cook those mushrooms in the oven, sear that porterhouse in my trusty cast iron skillet, and sit down to an unforgettable meal. Nice shrimp, which I'm just gonna poach in the perfect bath. So I have 5 pounds of shrimp, and I'm gonna cook them inside the shell, but we will just cut them and take the vein out. So that bouillon with all those wonderful flavors can seep right in there, but they stay nice and tucked in their shells, cozy. So I start with 2.5 quarts of water, and then 4 bay leaves. And I like to add about 16 peppercorns, a splash of hot sauce, a tablespoon of salt, and then just cut up a lemon into slices, and I use all of it. And I just put those slices right into there. A small bunch of parsley that I just kind of give a little break to, bruise it a little bit, and get those wonderful grassy tastes out into the liquid. Just put this on fairly high heat, because I just want to bring this all up to a boil, and then I'll lower the heat and let it simmer for a minute, and then we'll drop these gorgeous shrimp in here. Now for that unusual sauce. I like to make this sauce when the potato is still hot. It's just easier to blend all the ingredients together. So I just scoop out the flesh from the potato, and I go right to the blender. I need 2 tablespoons of warm water. Now to that, I'm gonna add 2 egg yolks. Just give it a little blend. Nice and easy. Just enough to break up the potato. Now for the acidity. So I start with a splash of red wine vinegar, splash of fresh lemon juice, and then a teaspoon of Dijon mustard. And then I blend it, just enough to integrate everything. At this point, I always give this sauce a taste to see if I need to add any salt or other seasoning. It does need a tiny pinch of salt and just a little bit more of that red wine vinegar. And I'll just give it one last blend. And then I'm ready to just add 1/2 cup of olive oil, nice and easy through the top. And then I take it out. It has this amazing glossy texture. I want to add a hint of spice, a little curry powder, 2 tablespoons. And curry is something that we commonly associate with Indian food, but in this case, with shrimp, something you'll often find in French bistros. Give it a little toast over low heat, just for a minute or 2. Stir that toasted curry powder right in there. So once that sauce is made, let's face it, you get really motivated to cook those shrimp. You might want to make a double recipe, because this sauce is serious. To devein them, I use a scissor and I just cut straight up the back. This is kind of fun. Open it up by squeezing it. Go to the base of the tail and just dig out that vein. And you'll pull it right down to the end. And then you can just use your knife and just gently drag to clean out any extra bit. And then you've got that nice, clean interior. This is the most important step in the recipe. So once all the shrimp are clean, then we turn back to that bouillon we put together. After I bring it to a simmer, just shut the heat off. I'm just gonna cook about 1/2 of the shrimp. Better to cook a smaller batch than it is to overload them. When I add these shrimp in, because they're cold, that the temperature of the bouillon's gonna drop. So this is gonna be like a nice warm bath. Perfect for keeping the shrimp tender, but cooking them through and allowing them to be infused with the flavors of our bouillon. So we are just finishing up cooking the shrimp And you can see they've turned a beautiful pink color. And you can actually feel the texture and look to see that there's no translucency, but that they still feel tender. That's when I take them out. Classically in a bistro, these shrimp are served pretty cold, so I'm gonna pop these in the fridge. What I would naturally do if I sat down in a bistro is order the champagne cocktail and then have some of those peel and eat shrimp we made. And then our sauce with the toasted curry. When you get that bracing taste of the curry powder in this sauce, those peppercorns, those bay leaves, it just really all comes together. Sweet and sour flowering red onions.
Ooh.
Whoa, flowering red onions.
Now, you could use yellow onions for this, but I'm really partial to the red onion. I like that sweetness. I like the texture of the red onion. And it's got a little cucumbery crunchiness. There's like a juiciness. So, super simple recipe, not much to it. It's all in how you make your cuts. We've got the onion, I've got the root end, and that's the end. You just wanna make sure you leave enough of that root end on there so that while you're cooking this, it's gonna hold its shape, right? So be careful when you make that cut. And then it sits flat on your cutting board, and you're literally just gonna make a cut at an angle like this. And you're not gonna go all the way through, just about 2/3 of the way through, and you stop, and then you just turn it a quarter turn. You make that same cut, not all the way through, and just one more time. Right? Now you think, okay, I get where you're going with this, right? The flour. But we have to cook it a little bit before we roast it in the oven. And you do that just by dropping them in boiling salted water. 4 or 5 minutes. We're looking to tenderize that onion, get inside the building, you know, start chatting the onion up and saying, hey, I need you to fall apart and become this beautiful flour. Now, I've had one in the water for a couple of minutes. You see right when it goes in the water, it's vibrant red, it's all tight, can't get inside there, and then it starts to open up. It's a lot like when you put a bouquet of flowers in warm water and you force them open a little bit. If you've ever made bouquets like that, it's the same.
Never knew that.
Right? And so here I had done a few before. And you can see.
Is there any vinegar in that water?
Yeah,
No,
really.
it's just, at this point, it's just salted water, as if you were cooking pasta or blanching vegetables. And then you wanna just pull them open a little bit, right? You can let these cool a minute or two and then open them up. Obviously, they're really hot, but you see we've got that flour. And when they come out of the oven, by the way, we're just gonna have a little glaze for them, which is just 2 tablespoons of red and 2 tablespoons of white vinegar with a tablespoon of brown sugar. And you literally just get that simmering on the stove. That's that sweet and sour. And that just kind of simmers on the stove, medium heat. Okay, first we're gonna put a little bit of olive oil. And you wanna get inside the crevices of those onions. This is so pretty. I mean, I think right like this, I'm ready. And it's got a big steak to stand up to, so, you know, it needs a little hair and makeup.
Does HMU, we call it in the biz.
Salt, right? Just sprinkle. Don't be afraid to get in there.
This is such a pretty presentation.
I'm
for a
already
dinner party.
mesmerized by it. And you know what? I know the classic chain steakhouse preparation of this is it's a lot easier
Frying,
than
though.
frying.
Yeah.
Breading and frying one of these.
Okay, I'm gonna put these in the oven, 425, hot, right? We've got a lot of onion to work through, 40 to 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We gotta really let these go.
Right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you know what you're doing.
I don't know what's coming out of this oven, too. This is
mind blowing.
Well, it's really pretty.
Oh,
Ooh, I
look
can
at
already
that,
see
Jeff.
pretty.
They really open
Jeff.
up.
oh, it looks like a lotus flower.
Yes, it does on the
Really?
pond.
that?
Lily pad.
And this just, because we boiled them, and then we just roast them, it's super easy. Boil, roast, see you later.
Boom.
Couple of different ingredients. You're just reducing that sugar and vinegar together, right, until it gets kind of syrupy.
I love the little crispy bits of a roasted red onion. That's the best.
Now, if you wanted to like, you know, get it crispy, could you throw breadcrumbs on and throw it in the broiler or something?
Yeah, you could go in a lot of directions
I like
with
this a lot.
This is just the vinegar and the brown sugar, and I'm really looking to a steak or a roasted chicken, somewhere where you almost want a little bit of kind of vinegary sweetness to go. You know, we want to move the entree conversation along a little bit, and I think these are the types of flavors that do that. Don't forget, even though we salted before, these opened up a little bit in the oven. Tiny pinch in the center there, in the heart where it may not have gotten all that seasoning that we put on initially. And this is so easy to serve, and it's dramatic.
Dramatic.
You could do all this ahead of time and just have this sitting here, and people are like, are you a chef? Like, are you on the kitchen?
It's kind of dummy-proof, too, and it's an onion. You know what I mean? It's just the whole onion. It's it. There's nothing, it's not a
This
potato.
really is where the side steals the show.
There, very dramatic, I feel.
Oh, beautiful.
That's the prettiest one. Ooh.
I like my medium rare, please.
You want a medium rare onion? Could make these more well done. You could char them a little bit, right?
Toss them under the broiler for a minute.
Such great texture, I feel, with this steak, and we want something different from all those potatoes, okay? We
love
all
the
know.
sweetness that's in that vinegar sauce.
Very paleo.
There's a lot going on in a simple dish.
Today we are going to make a spring pea salad with mustard dressing. So simple. Little setup just to kind of get orientated in the kitchen and make it really easy. I've got some water boiling on the stove. I have my peas, which are already washed. I have snow peas, the flat ones, and sugar snap peas, which have the little peas inside. And my secret favorite, and don't lie like you don't love them, frozen peas that are just draining. All these together are gonna make a fantastic salad. So let's get started. The first thing I'm gonna do is make my dressing. I'm gonna start with the mustard. And I do measure. People ask me all the time, do you measure? You know what? I do. For things like dressing and baking where there's precision, I do. So I've got 3 tablespoons of just a classic Dijon mustard. And then 2 tablespoons to that of red wine vinegar. Right in there. Is it weird that just vinegar and mustard makes my mouth water? It's usually a sign that something good is about to happen. To that, I'm gonna add a teaspoon of capers. I don't really chop them up or anything. You can, but I kind of like them whole here. And a little bit of that brine is fine in there. Just a teaspoon. You don't want to overdo it. All right, so we have the red wine vinegar, we have the mustard. Those are both kind of pretty acidic and bright elements, but not quite enough to kind of really round out all those peas. So to that, I'm gonna add a little bit of lemon juice. You can use a lemon squeezer and all sorts of fancy accoutrements, or you can just cut the lemon in half, hold it upright like this, and squeeze over the bowl, and all the pits, if any, will sit right here. It's a great weeding and straining process. Of course, I just got one in there. I'm gonna add a little bit of zest. Not too much. You don't wanna overdo it. The lemon zest is really there for a little bit of bitterness, which is nice. We want that, but not too much. Don't zest the whole lemon, it'll be overwhelming. Okay, I'm just gonna whisk all that together. All right, so this is our kind of bright, vibrant base. To that, we're gonna start with 1/3 cup of olive oil. You see the olive oil kind of links up with the mustard, because mustard has that natural thickener, the lecithin, which just immediately creates a dressing with body, which I love, because I don't want to sit there trying to make a thin dressing thick. I'm gonna add a touch more. I do judge by texture a little bit of dressing here. And then, of course, most importantly, before you do anything else, taste your dressing. It's good. Mustardy. I'm gonna add a touch more oil. You want your dressing in the bowl to be a little bit stronger than you'd like in the salad itself, because once we add all those peas, you're gonna see the dressing kind of takes a little bit of a back seat. A little bit of freshly ground black pepper. Pretty good. I like this. I'm gonna let it sit. And now we're gonna get to the topic, the main topic, which is our peas. So we have the water boiling, right? About blanching. I wait until the water boils and then I add salt. I get this question a lot. Add salt and then boil the water, add salt from cold. When do I add the salt? I'm gonna tell you. You wanna add it right when the water boils. I don't wanna make a salt reduction here. If you drag the salt along for the whole ride of boiling the water, your water can get really salty. And while we want it to impart flavor to the peas, we don't want it to be overly, right? I stir it, and I treat this almost like as part of the ingredient list, the blanching water itself. I taste the tiniest bit. It should taste a little bit like when you went swimming in the ocean as a kid and you got that mouthful of seawater. That's the taste we're going for here. Okay, these do not cook at the same rate, so I'm gonna cook them individually, and as you can see, this is gonna go pretty quickly. Why do this? Good question. Just blanching the peas in boiling salted water for a minute or two just changes the texture. It adds water to them. It's like a really great spa treatment for these peas, and it's also really easy. These obviously have been washed already. So I'll drop the snow peas first into the salted water. And you can see the minute you drop them in the water, you can see the difference in the color right away. It also tenderizes the exterior of the skin and just makes them tasty. Plus, you're gonna be way cooler and smarter than any of your friends if you do this. How long was that? About 30 seconds or a minute or so? Take these out. I like to use a spider to get them out of the water really quickly. And I will drop them immediately into an ice bath that I have ready. Now here's where we are really way smarter. I have an ice bath, ice and water underneath, and a colander submerged in there. That way, I don't have to dig through all the ice cubes and whatever else to get my peas out. I can just lift the colander when they're cool. So there's no point to an ice bath if you don't actually make sure that the blanched vegetables cool really quickly. What we're doing here that's super important is taking them from very hot to very cold quickly. That preserves that vibrant green color and gives us that great taste we're looking for. So I just stir them, swirl them around a little in the ice bath, make sure that they're really cooling. Meanwhile, the water comes back up to a boil, and I drop those sugar snaps in. Give them a little stir just to make sure they're swirling around in that water. We're gonna cook those for maybe a minute. Now, I have the frozen peas. What are we gonna do to those? Well, let me tell you, nothing. You just defrost them and drain them so there's no excess moisture, and we'll use them as is. The peas have already been through a lot, okay? Frozen peas, they're traumatized. They're ready to go. They're sweet little nubs of sugar that remind you of when you were a kid. You got them stuck in the mashed potatoes, or you found them in a chicken pot pie, and we're gonna use them like that. A little burst of sweetness, starchiness, and reminiscence. Okay, so my first snow peas are pretty cool. I'm gonna drop them onto just a baking sheet fitted with a kitchen towel. You could literally just lay this right out on your kitchen counter if you'd rather. See how beautiful they are? They taste good too. They're kind of tenderized slightly. Because after you eat 5 or 6 mouthfuls of raw peas, you start to feel a little bit like you're eating grass and chewing a lot. So this tenderizes, adds more flavor. Okay, settle down over there. So my sugar snap peas have been in there about a minute, minute and a half. I'm gonna take them out. You can take them out and put them right in the colander into the ice bath. I'm just trying to show you. Look how beautiful they are. I like when you can make something for color that's vibrant and beautiful, but everything also has meaning and flavor. Right into the ice bath. And you can see they go in steaming hot. Just give them a little swirl in there. Make sure they're cooling quickly. People often, you're gonna go to the trouble of making an ice bath, right? You wanna make sure it's really cooling them. You also wanna let an ingredient like this that's a little bit dense sit in here for a minute or two to make sure they really get cool. It's like when you go into the sauna or the steam bath or the shower. It takes a couple minutes for you to get acclimated. The same is true for vegetables in an ice bath, right? Okay, let's start to really build this salad. So at this point, I'm gonna clear out a little bit, create space for myself. The kitchen is kind of like your desk at work. You get more work done when you have a clear desk. What do they say, like clean desk, clean head, or clear desk, clear head? Something like that. Same is true with food. So back to our dressing, where we started this whole journey. Where are we? We've got those beautiful snow peas. We've got these sugar snaps, which we cooked a little extra minute longer because they're a little bit thicker and bigger. They need that extra time in the water. You can see how vibrant and green they are. That's really the #1 reason why we go to that extra trouble of the ice bath. It just stops the cooking. Otherwise, these peas can turn brown. Now, here's the thing about a really great salad. To me, the enemy of a great salad is any excess water. It dilutes the flavors we work so hard to create. So that's why I take a minute and just with a kitchen towel, just pat dry the peas and get rid of all that extra water on top of them. That's gonna intensify the pea flavor. Look at that. So pretty. Okay. So this is about 12 ounces of each type of pea. Now let's say they don't have good sugar snaps at the store. You can sub in another type of pea. You can just use snow peas. You don't have to worry about getting all these exact types. Do the best you can. It's nice to have different types of peas just for variation in texture when you're chewing. One of the things that keeps people eating your food is when the textures vary and it's exciting and crunchy and crispy. Before we toss in the dressing, let's add a tiny pinch of seasoning right to the outside of the peas. A little bit of freshly ground pepper all around. And, you know, for grandma, a tiny pinch of sugar right on top of there. Yeah. People say to me, how do I get vegetables to taste like they did when I was a kid? The answer is just a pinch of sugar and some attitude and some mustard. All right, toss just a few times. You see I'm just using 2 tablespoons. If you have some fancy salad spoons you'd like to use, go for it. Now sometimes I'll do up to here and stop and just pop this in the fridge for a half an hour or an hour, and then when my guests come, I toss in the rest. You can do that. It's nice to have a stopping point. The frozen peas, you gotta do it. People will say, are these fresh peas? And you're gonna say, yes, they are. You're gonna say, I learned how to shell peas on the Food Network app. It was amazing. I'm never going back. Look at that. See how those little peas just seem to kind of fill in all the crevices, you know? Look at that. It's like the verb in a sentence. Okay, let's get that one last thing. You know, there's always one last thing. I'm gonna get some basil and some pea shoots. If you can't find pea shoots or pea tendrils, do not despair. Add a pinch of nice peppery arugula instead. I'm not gonna say, oh, you can add any old green, it doesn't matter, because it does matter. It matters what things we combine here to create that taste, but peppery arugula, if you can't find any pea shoots or pea tendrils, is perfectly cool. These are pretty long. I'll just break them in half, just to make them a little easier to eat. You know when you're eating a salad and this is like hanging out of your mouth, you wanna think about that, the chewability factor. I've got some basil. I'll just stem it a little bit. If the leaves are really big, tear them up a little bit, right? It's really nice to tear basil with your hands instead of using a knife, because oftentimes the metal of the knife interacts with the basil, and that's part of why it gets a dark color. You know how you just kind of stem it? You know what has the most flavor? All those little bits on the stems. Make sure you really stem your basil, because it just smells. Look at that. I could stop right here, or we could just do a few tosses. You don't want to overdo the tossing. You really want the bulk of the dressing to hang out with those peas, and for the basil and the pea tendrils to just be semi-coated with the dressing. I'm just gonna taste one. It's really good. You know what's funny about this salad? It has no fat in it except the olive oil. So you may find at the last minute that you wanna do a tiny drizzle more of olive oil. And for my taste, this needs a little more pepper and a pinch more salt and a pinch more sugar. Basically, it needs more of everything. Do you notice that? Here we are together, and it just didn't turn out perfectly. It's not a, oh my God, yum, it's perfect. You gotta go in there, have a tiny bite, and just revise at the last minute. That last minute taste can be the difference between a good or a great dish. For a little, I'm already trying to get this on a plate. Kind of like the wooden plate for this. It's kind of poetic. There's something about foraging the peas in the woods, especially those frozen ones that you foraged in your local forest, and then putting them on a wooden plate and acting very farm to table about the whole thing. Look at that. I love the way this salad kind of piles up. I kind of love that it's all one color. It's just so fresh. This is great to serve with something kind of rich too, you know, like a stew or even a steak. It's just got such a really vibrant green look. Look at that. So simple. Okay. Let's give myself a final taste. This is not a salad to eat on a first date. This is like a salad to eat on the third date because it's kind of messy. So first rope them in with something, you know, cute, like a little custard or an elegant bowl of soup, and then get into the salad. I really love the basil in here. It's super grassy, and it kind of differentiates the types of peas from each other. Really good.
Crab Louie.
Yeah,
Crab Lou. What do you want me to do here, Alex, before you get going?
I want you to break apart the lettuce leaves because we're
Carefully.
gonna do like lettuce cups. So we need really
Ooh,
perfect
yes,
cups,
I
and
like
we're gonna
this.
cut the cherry tomatoes in half, lay them out here, season them with salt and pepper,
Okay.
and then arrange them on the platter. Half a cup of mayonnaise, 2 tablespoons of chili sauce, 2 tablespoons of sour cream. I love a little sour cream and mayonnaise. That's the king of salads, right? By the way, there's nothing salad-like about what I'm
Nothing.
doing.
Yeah, I'm like, when does the salad come
It's a
up?
salad composé.
There's gonna be a chiffonade of kale later.
Wait, so that was lemon?
2 tablespoons of lemon. It's 2. 2 chili sauce, 2 lemon juice, 2 sour cream mixed with half a cup of mayonnaise and some
What's that, Worcestershire?
little Worcestershire. We're mincing scallions.
Why scallions?
I think with the crab, there's some chive and there's some scallions. So I'm putting most of the white part of
lemon.
the scallions that I cut into the sauce itself. And then again, you know me and my sheet tray method. I think with crab, you really wanna, it's such a noble and delicate ingredient.
You don't want to make a crab paste, right?
Yeah, really don't, more than anything, I don't wanna have to mix this a lot because it doesn't wanna be overworked. Crab is not an ingredient that wants to hit the gym at all. Look at that, beautiful, Jeff. So now we have this opportunity, and I think, you know, start by just giving your crab a little taste, because sometimes it can be saltier. And this is a little naturally salty, so it's good to know where you're at. Little pepper on there. Straight lemon juice on the crab. I really believe this is the kind of dish where you have to make sure everything is individually seasoned perfectly, and then you mix it together. So I'm going kind of deep. I don't know that crab can get enough lemon to become its
agree with
crabby,
that.
fabulous self. We'll go with some of the scallions on there.
Can I eat this off the sheet pan too?
Why not?
If you behave, and you seem to be doing pretty well.
Let me get a large.
What type of crab is best for this?
Well, I think the jumbo lump, and that's a little chive. The jumbo lump is definitely what I always love. So again, this interspersing.
Wow, Jeff.
Look at this.
Fabulous. That looks gorgeous.
This is very 80s.
Oh man, this is like.
Yeah.
This needs to be like a glass.
This is like
clamshell.
at the
dish.
Waldorf Astoria on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. But I think the important thing is, you know, when we're making these old dishes is just to think about everything and how every little thing is gonna taste when we put it all together, right? It's easy, I think, to skip over the little steps, and that may be my update of just seasoning the eggs and seasoning the tomatoes.
Some eggs there for Jeff tomorrow. He loves hard-boiled
I know,
eggs.
Jeff loves boiled eggs.
You know what? We each have our
Well,
things.
Putting a little lemon right on the egg, too. I
Oh,
want
why
everything
not?
to pop.
This
And
point.
look at this beautiful platter Jeff made.
So gorge.
That's stunning. And then we just go lettuce cup, okay?
She's an artiste, so.
1982 is on the phone, and they're like, we love you, XOXO. Right? Jeff, will you do me a favor and just, like, intersperse the critically important hard-boiled egg? I love that sulfury egg with the crab, right? Can tell Jeff is just feeling this.
Nothing entices my palate like the word sulfur.
I know, I'm sorry. Oh, my God, I just realized I made you handle the hard-boiled eggs. I'm
No, I
sorry.
don't mind touching them.
Is it okay?
That's good. I'll have a bite. You know I will.
And then this is little party bites if you want, right? You can serve this as a salad on the veranda. You can serve it as a little party bite.
I think maybe I'm gonna switch from a martini to a South Cider.
Ooh,
Those
sit
are
out on the
dangerous.
veranda.
Those are dangerous.
Yep.
Why?
Alex, this is clear. The king of salads, all this crab meat going on there. It's luxurious.
You know, I've also had this, I like this rendition actually better than the one I've had in like a glass, parfait glass with shredded iceberg, like layered, where you go down and
You get surprise scoops.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful.
More friendly to
presentation.
eat.
She's not going to stop. She's
not. She doesn't
She's
stop.
carrying this really quick. Man, she goes.
Oh my God.
Pepper?
Pep it up.
Pep it up.
Yeah, why not?
Okay, sign of painting, give me one.
Time for the... We need a couple little tomatoes. I'm nervous.
Should be.
Jeffrey is the... Now, Jeffrey, do you make this dish? Is this something...
I had made a
doing?
version of this at Le Cirque where I worked,
Okay.
but we did it we had a mousseline and we had it en gelée. So it was this inside gelée.
Oh,
Oh, my
that's
God. Now, that's nuts.
that sounds, yeah, that's a little much.
Oh, so when you're saying Angele, you're saying this dish literally with a slick of the old school aspect, the
Yeah.
gelatin over
In a
it
mold,
to
and
like
you had
preserve
to,
it.
unmold it onto a salad.
Like a little crab Louis gelatin
Yes.
cup.
What do we think, Jeffrey? That's got your name all over
I
it.
mean,
We might as well call this the Jeffrey episode.
You're right. I agree. May I serve you?
Thank
Old
you.
school.
Thank you.
A
What
napkin?
makes this, honestly, what makes this are two things. The Worcestershire and the lemon. Without that, the crab would have no identity because it really needs to be talked to and spoken to and held by lemon juice and Worcestershire.
I agree.
oh man, I didn't know that crab was so needy.
Crab is a well of emotional need.
It is.
It's
and
hard
it's
to-
expensive, so...
I can't really say anything other than wow.
Today I'm making some classic pub food, a little meal of my favorite things. Some soup with some blistering tomatoes and melted mozzarella cheese oozing over the top, and with it, a hamburger. Now I start by blistering some fresh tomatoes in a little bit of canola oil. So I cut an X in the bottom and I core the top. That allows air to pass from one end of the tomato to the other, which means while I'm blistering them, the skin is gonna come off a little bit, get charred, and give my soup this added intensity. I'm gonna use my trusty cast iron skillet, and I'm gonna get it roaring hot. I think food is a lot about the weather. If it's cold outside or it's rainy, it makes me wanna make a soup that feels like I'm putting on a jacket. So I can hear that crackling sound of the skin. Let's give him a little flip and see what's happening. Now, the really cool thing about this technique is it stems from watching my mom char peppers on the burner. She would just throw a pepper right on the burner, turn it up high, char the whole thing, and that wonderful smoky smell of the skin charring was so appetizing to me. This soup recreates that feeling, but chars the skin of tomatoes instead. So once the skin starts to come off the tomatoes and peel away and char a little bit, that's when I add 1 tablespoon of regular sugar. Tomatoes that are fresh like this have more acidity, but they need that little secretarial assistance, that pinch of sugar for added sweetness. Now to cook them and finish cooking them until they're tender, I wanna add a little bit of liquid, but a liquid that's dry, that's gonna really add flavor. 1/4 cup of dry vermouth. Now when adding this, I just shut off the heat, so I don't have to worry about a 5-alarm fire. Once I've added the vermouth, I'll just let it simmer on the stove over a nice low heat and just kind of let those tomatoes get nice and soft and tender. I always like to add that fresh element that really takes the soup the extra distance. So I peeled a few shallots. One of my favorite vegetables because they just have a natural sweetness, but they also bring that little oniony bite to the table. They're really versatile. I have to tell you, I grew up in Midtown Manhattan, and on the corner, there was a pub. It was called Mulligan's. It was kind of dark and scary and gloomy, and it had all these amazing smells. Brisket cooking, stroganoff, braised chicken. Scary? Yes. Exciting? Yes. To a young girl walking by, something strangely enticing about the pub. And I think that's where I developed my association with pub food, the weather, a certain mood. So with the 3 shallots, I'm chopping up 10 cloves of garlic. And I'll just take that, swoop it right up, and go into the pot. Add a pinch of chili flakes, a 1/4 teaspoon, and that's just enough to give it a little kick without being spicy. And a tablespoon of oregano. A pinch of white pepper, and a pinch of salt. Just to start drawing the water out of those garlic slices and shallots. A little stir with a wooden spoon, shallots, the garlic, take a little nose bath, take a minute to smell the flowers and enjoy this. Once this starts to kind of caramelize and cook down, get a little translucent and a little brown, that's when I want to add the canned tomatoes. And I just add 1 can of peeled tomatoes. So the peeled tomatoes are cooked already, so they have a developed sweetness from being cooked that the fresh don't have. And that's why I like to use half and half. The acidic freshness of the fresh tomatoes, and then the more developed sweetness of the canned. But whenever I make a soup like this, there's never enough liquid. Let's add a little water. And to this, I'll add a little bit less sugar, 1 teaspoon. So now I have the 2 halves of my soup cooking. Now this is the kind of soup that I'm gonna put in a crock. After I've poured this delicious combination of fresh and canned tomatoes into my crock, I want there to be that extra layer of bone-warming comfort. So I always turn to a loaf of sourdough bread for that. And I just tear a piece of the sourdough bread, and it has to be enough so that it can perch on top and overlap just a little bit. I'm gonna just toast those pieces of bread at 375 degrees until they get all crunchy. I'll pop these in the oven dry. I don't wanna put any olive oil or butter or anything on that bread because I wanna maximize the crispiness by making it dry, because I wanna top it with some fresh mozzarella that I will just break into small pieces. I like to use some fresh mozzarella for this. It has a really clean taste, which picks up on the fresh tomatoes we use in the base of our soup. And when the toast is ready and that soup goes in these ramekins, the cheese melts, we are gonna be transported to a Midtown pub for the ultimate comfort moment. So I've let these tomatoes cook down on the stove until they're nice and tender, and you can see that wonderful fresh tomato pulp there, combined with the charred aspect of the skin. Now, as you crush these, you'll see you'll get this wonderful liquid, the combination of the juice from the tomatoes, the cooking liquids, some seeds, some charred skin. This is an essential part of this soup's uniqueness. Once these are crushed up a little, we come to the other part of the soup, part 2, the sliced garlic, the shallots, and the canned tomatoes. And this is sort of like the roaring ocean, and this is the nice calm bay, and we're combining them. I'm only gonna puree the fresh tomatoes so that that wonderful charred taste goes all through the soup. Pop that in the blender. Now for that combining of the 2 parts. And this is really the final step in this soup. Just stir that right in there. And then taste it. I get that charred taste, that hint of chili flake. Sometimes I add just a touch of olive oil at the end just to round it out a little bit. Just pour that olive oil right in. Just a little bit. I kind of don't want it to get completely mixed in. Just leave it a little bit separated so it has that wonderful rich gloss on top. In the meantime, I had this wonderful charred tomato soup, that bread that I so delicately and precisely measured, and then that cheese perched on top. And now I'll just pop these in the oven under the broiler and let that cheese get all melty and fantastic.